and for sticking with us to talk about some of these things that definitely matter. We're looking into a conversation that many might ask, okay, so, well, all right, let's get into it this morning. Our guests are in the hot seat today. Florence Ndeti is director at Caritas Kitui and is in the room with us this morning. Good morning, Florence.
Good morning.
How are you? Karibu sana. Welcome to the Situation Room. Dr. Raphael Kinoti is Regional Director, Brooke East Africa, and also joins us. Good morning.
Morning to you.
Good morning to you, Karibu sana, and thank you for joining us today. We're looking at preserving the African donkey. Many didn't know that there was just an African one. Maybe they were going to find out a little bit more about this today and why this conversation is important in the first place. But before we get into that, Dennis goes to a different African country every week and comes back with their proverbs. We'd love to get your interpretation of it.
So we are in Eritrea, and Eritrea became a country pretty much, or rather got independent in 1993 after 30 years of war with Ethiopia. So outside Asmara, which is the capital, which is also known as Little Rome due to its architecture, there is a graveyard, but that is for tanks. That is a reminder of the war that the people of Eritrea did go through. But the proverb that we get today from Eritrea is, the tongue has no bone, however, it has the capacity to break bones. How would you interpret it? Ladies go first.
The tongue has no bones.
Has no bones, but has the capacity to break bones.
My interpretation is that words are sharp and they can influence any move, any change that is desired, and you don't have to have an hard object to break a decision or to make a decision.
Yeah. Profile, how would you interpret it?
Actually, it takes me back many years before Kenya formed the National Cohesion and Integration Commission, when bad talk really took us too far. So it really goes down to tell us actually that talk that can be a bit casual may go too far actually and break some bones elsewhere.
Yeah. What's terribly interpreted.
Indeed.
Yes.
We have to be careful with what we say, isn't it?
Yeah.
All right. Let's start with Brooke East Africa. What does Brooke East Africa actually do? And of course, we're talking about all of this in relation to the preservation of the African donkey and why it's important to have that conversation. Let's start off with what Brooke does.
Okay, thank you, Uncle. Brooke East Africa is, we are an animal welfare organization, actually, an NGO, non-government organization. We have headquarters in the UK in London, but then we've been doing animal welfare, and in particular, equine welfare, for the last 91 years. So Brooke was begun in 1934 in Egypt, but then for all those years, we've been working for the welfare of working animals. And when I say working animals, I mean the horse, the donkey, and the mule. These are animals that don't produce necessarily meat for people or food for people, but they move things in significant ways that actually help communities. So that's our work in Kenya. We began work in 2001. So we've been around for the last 25 years around the country, mainly really with local communities and helping them on how to take care of one critical animal, the donkey, which you don't find in many policies in the country, but then that's where we are working with people who own actually working animals.
Yeah, and one would then ask Florence, with Brooke and what it is they do, how does then you come in to ensure that this animal, the African donkey, is protected? Because first of all, African donkey, one would just think, we've always thought just a donkey is a donkey, So when we talk about protecting the African donkey, what forces us to do that? Why is that a concern as we speak today?
Okay, thank you. Take you back to Caritas Kitui, which is the development department of the Catholic Church in Kitui. We are partners with Brooke, and as we are in contact with the donkey owners and donkey users, our inspiration to the donkey is informed by the treatment the handling of the donkey by the donkey owners and users, which was informed by study that we did on how people handle the donkey and how much they appreciate the donkey. There were so many gaps that came in, that feeding was an issue, watering was an issue, handling, harnessing, and treatment also when the donkey is sick, because it's always treated like, previously we used to say other animal donkeys eat courtesy of cattle. But now it is the reverse, because there was no appreciation for the work that it does, economic work, social support to the households. And being in the rural areas, majority of the households own at least 1 or 2 donkeys to support their economic work or their livelihoods.
Yeah.
So that gives us the call that we have a responsibility to collectively engage everyone to preserve the African donkey.
Yeah.
What are the issues when it comes to the care of donkeys? If you live in an urban setting, the likelihood of you coming into contact with this animal and what it does then is slim to none. So what exactly is this animal used for? I mean, we've heard the phrases. It's called the beast of burden. It carries things all over the place. But what exactly is it used for in the parts where we can now have a measured approach to this and say this animal is being mistreated?
That's a great question, actually. It's amazing how donkeys are invisible. They are everywhere. They are all over. But most of the time, they're invisible, actually. I'll give you some figures, probably that will help you get this clearly. In Kenya, donkeys help approximately 6 million people. In Africa, donkeys help an approximately 50 million people. In the city of Nairobi, incidentally, donkeys have employed young people. I'll give you examples of Ruai, where you go and find donkeys every single day, ferrying water to construction site, moving people. Donkeys actually cleaning the city. There are young boys actually who have donkeys that have donkey carts, and they are ferrying, waste material every single day.
Okay.
So donkeys are so much embedded in the livelihoods of people. We did a survey 5 years ago, and we realized actually that in Kenya, 40,000 youths in cities and towns are employed by donkeys.
Yeah.
So the numbers are very significant. And that's why we're saying this animal is so critical to the livelihoods of people. Yeah. The estimates are actually that one donkey is taking care of between 3 to 5 people. One donkey, because then people keep donkeys for work. And every day they're waking up and going to do work. So you can imagine if you eliminated every single donkey in Kenya, then 6 million people would be in serious problems, actually in surviving on a daily basis. Yeah.
So you've painted a picture of why Kenyans should take care of donkeys, right? But then again, there is also the aspect of over time. I don't know. You correct me if I'm wrong. Over time, and with the development going up, right? People have rather moved away from using the donkey as before, because now we have cars, we have roads, and all these things, right? But even that notwithstanding, there's still a population that still depends on donkeys in a huge way. So then how do we have these conversations for everybody, whether you are there to just look at a donkey, you're using it for work, or you are just passing by a donkey, everybody to respect what a donkey does to the societies that we do have? How do we have this conversation so that everybody is part and parcel of these conversations?
Okay, thank you for that question. Development has come, but to who? Because majority of the figures that have been given by Daktari is the rural population. The roads are inaccessible. the motorbikes that are said to replace or could be used by the households. Most of the households may not afford. If they afford, there's a question of maintenance and fueling. Donkeys are free labor that can be used by children, by women without any strain. Because as much as we are approaching development, it is not yet there. So for now, the donkey is as valuable as most women would refer them in Kitui, that they are second husbands. Based on the research that Dr. has talked about, it gave us a figure that a donkey within a household, a single donkey, cumulatively can earn an household around 11,000. How many people are able to work and earn 11,000 in a month?
Okay.
It's near impossible.
What are these animals doing? What services essentially are they providing for these families?
Basic services are transportation of water, especially from our region in Kitui. And by the way, Kitui, we have 10% of the donkeys that Dr. has talked about. Transportation of water, transportation of sick people in areas which are not accessible, transportation of farm produce, from the farm to the households, from the household to the market, and the reverse, from the market to the households where it is necessary. The donkeys also serve the other livestock in the house by providing water. They fetch the water they bring, so it is given to the other livestock. We also have in other areas within the country where they are used for transportation, especially the pastoralists. They move with their luggage from one point to the other. So the donkeys are means of transport. We've seen in other areas where in peri-urban centers, they are being used by the youth for economic empowerment in construction, movement of construction materials, movement of goods from one point, like Mwea, movement of rice from the farms to the market. So that is basically the broader work. But there is a silent work that is never mentioned in most, and it is not documented. In our area where we come from, for example, it's the season of pigeon pea, Bahazi.
Yeah.
Do you know the waste of donkey has historically been used? You collect the waste, you burn it within the plant at the farm, and there are no insects. That is not documented anywhere. It has been there historically. And without the donkey, the poor person who cannot afford the pesticides from the shops or from the agrovets survives with that. So without the donkey, then it means this farmer is in a problem. Again, even with the agrovets, we have counterfeit, where you buy, you spray, and nothing changes. But the donkey waste has been confirmed as a cushion to that need. So we need to continue working and preserving the donkey. But when development comes, we cannot resist. Let it come, we'll transition.
Okay.
That is my basic approach.
Yet, Dr. with the importance of donkeys and those who own donkeys, then there is the other side of things where owners of donkeys have been seen not to be taking care of these animals, despite the fact that they give them 11,000 shillings a month of all the work that they are doing, pesticides that you're now getting into our farms. They've not taken care of these animals. You find someone is using a donkey and is whipping the donkey to a point where you're asking, why do you do that? So then we also have to speak to the owners of these donkeys and the importance of taking care of these animals. In your research, perhaps, or even when you just speak to the owners of these animals, what will it take for us to see proper treatment of these animals? Because if we depend on them, we must treat them right. Because even in our homes, earlier you said, every other livestock in the community or in our bomas would be fed first. Then the donkey is an afterthought.
No, exactly. I think one of the undoing of the donkey is that it's a very resilient animal. Actually, is the most resilient animal that we have as livestock. And it's resilient because of its history. Do you know, Dennis, the donkey is the only livestock that was first domesticated in Africa?
Yeah.
Every donkey that you see anywhere in the world came from Africa. In the world, there's significant numbers of donkeys, whether they're in Asia or the Americas or wherever, but they all came from here. So the donkey is made for Africa. resilient, tough. Everything around it, from its morphology, from the ears to the sound it produces, to the limbs, to the color, to everything, the donkey is for Africa. Very resilient. And so you mistreat it, you don't see the negative impact. It still keeps going. And that is what really keeps cheating people. Actually, this animal, whatever thing I want to do to it, I can still do to it, and it still keeps going and keeps going. But we've seen donkeys actually succumb to the heavy loads, the heavy burdens. We've gone to Moya, for example, and found, a cart full of rice, 16 bags of rice. You can imagine how 16 90 kg bags of rice, and 2 donkeys are pulling that. They won't pull that for long. Donkeys can live for over 20 years, but on average, you find donkeys in places like Moya won't live beyond 10 years.
Okay.
Because then of the mistreatment, the hard work that they have had to go through, all this. And actually, that's why we go out to the communities and tell them this animal feels pain, is a sentient being. If you hit it, it can feel pain. If you push it hard, it can get tired. Machas is a very resilient animal, but then all these battering and things can actually reduce his life, cut down his life, cut down his productivity and all these. And so what we say to communities is that actually, mtunze punda akutunze. You take care of the donkey, it takes care of you.
Okay.
Actually, I found in Tanzania, there is a saying that punda afe mzigo ufike. There's a common saying out there. But actually, Tanzanians have discovered actually is punda afe uwe punda we mwenyewe.
Do you find that societies where there's almost a total reliance on this animal then take care of them better? I'm going to use the Lamu example. Lamu made up of an archipelago. So whether you're looking at Manda Bay, Kipungani, Shela, Lamu itself, and the other islands then to the west, all separated by water. And so your main transport, if you're connecting to the different islands, is water transport. But on the islands themselves, Lamu, Shela doesn't have any vehicles. Lamu maybe has 3. Kipungani has 1, from what we understand, what we've seen and know. But you'll find that the donkey population, in many cases, rivals the human population. But you'll also find that they take care of these animals because there is a heavy reliance on them to move goods. So when the goods come from Manda to Lamu, for example, coming off of the boats, it is the donkeys that are moving them to different households, to shops. And if you move through Lamu or if you move through Shela, you will find that the way you have a bus stop, you have a donkey stop. They are there, they're being fed, they're being watered. There's a donkey clinics whereby if this one is it's being treated. But they rely on them, so they understand the importance of then taking care of them. And I think that there was a campaign at some point whereby Lamu was the center, whereby they made sure that, you got to treat this thing well, because if you don't, you will basically not survive it. Your roads are too narrow for you to use vehicles. This is the only form that you can use. So do we find that societies that are 90 to almost 100% reliant on these animals will treat them better?
Definitely. I think the whole picture that actually we paint for a very badly treated donkey is mostly in towns and cities.
Yeah.
Right.
Where donkeys have come in as the last resort. I talk to young people in Kiseri and they tell me, I wouldn't be using this donkey if I had gotten a job somewhere, downtown. So they are doing that not because they love it. They are doing it because then is nothing else. And probably some of them have never had contact with the donkeys. It's the first time they're coming across a donkey. So they really don't know how to use it. But look, traditionally, donkeys actually are very well treated. Go to Masai land. You've talked about Lamu. Go even to Turkana. But even traditionally, do you know, Oko, that actually when they dig down the graves of pharaohs in Egypt, they find the pharaohs are buried together with donkeys. Because then the whole thinking was this pharaoh can never survive in the afterworld without having some donkeys with them. Because then even the pyramids of Egypt were built by donkeys. So that's how critical these animals are. The communities that use them heavily really know how important they are. And actually, our story of the donkey, I always want to say this, is not peculiar to the world. Do you know what developed Europe? This is the horse.
Yeah.
That's why even power today, we measure it on horsepower. You know?
Yeah.
Horses go to Europe from where we are to where they are. They still keep horses today, not for work, but for entertainment, for other things. And that's the same thing we are telling Africa. We have to preserve these animals. We need them today. They are helping us every day today.
Yeah.
Tomorrow, the donkeys have lots of other uses. Lots of other uses. And we can mention those many uses into donkey milk, into donkeys in our sports and our culture. Lamu is doing cultural weeks and they're using donkeys. So let's preserve them today, but then even tomorrow for that use.
Yet, Florence, we look at a sad situation in the country where we see, we find donkeys being slaughtered. There is a trade of donkey skin in the country. And one asks the question, how did we ever get here?
We got here before we knew we were there. Yes. With the hide trade, maybe before 2017. 2017 is when we became to realize, yes, this is happening. And we knew previously, we had a law in Kenya that had not provided for donkey as meat. But our Kenyans in Turkana were eating meat. So the country went into review of the law and donkey was clustered as meat animal, but not as for trade. From my understanding, based on that opening, the trade came in. And then there's the interest in the skin, which came, and then the theft started. Actually, the trade started with a bit of theft. You wake up in the morning, your donkey is just skinned behind the house. You are left with the carcass, the skin is gone. And then it has blown out to like a daily agenda for the traders, which now is a threat to the donkey population in the country. I want to leave the question of how donkey is reproduced to Daktari, because he's more fast to that. But we know donkeys are not easy to multiply, like goats, like cattle. So that gives us a worry, because the uptake of the donkeys on slaughter, it's at an alarming stage, even including, even now, after doing a lot of engagement with the government, banning all the 4 slaughterhouses in donkey slaughterhouses in the country, but the trade is still going on.
I mean, Doctor, we talk about these slaughterhouses because I remember at some point there was a slaughterhouse that was, I think, somewhere in Nakuru, Naivasha, for donkeys at the time.
Naivasha.
And at the time, we started seeing the numbers of donkeys being slaughtered going up. And with the trade of skin as well, that for some weird reason as well is a big thing right now. Where are these cases being reported more, and why in these areas? And as well, even now with the ban that is there, are we seeing any change?
Dennis, if you allow me, I'll give a snippet of probably what Florence has said in terms of history, but then I'll come quickly to your question. Donkey slaughter came in a disguised way, but then the biggest challenge has been the export of the skins to China.
Okay.
I mean, it's all over in the media everywhere. China produces a traditional Chinese medicine called a jiao.
Okay.
That is what they produce from the skin of the donkey. So you already know lots of other traditional Chinese medicines, like what is driving our rhinos into extinction, our elephants into extinction with the tusk and the rhino horn and all that, is in the same line actually. When we established the first donkey slaughterhouse in Naivasha in 2016, that's when we opened the can of worms. Because then the young people, sorry that we have this big group of young people who don't have job, they began seeing a very easy way of actually, you just go, steal someone's donkey, slaughter it in the bush, get the skin, smuggle it into some trader, you know, who will actually be able to get the skin out there. A jiao out there is very costly, and it's been a traditional Chinese medicine for many, many years. But as time went on, you know, the economy of China has been growing, so more people can afford it. And so then the demand has gone higher. China has had 11 million donkeys by 1996. Today, their numbers of donkeys have gone below 2 million. So now they have to seek for skins from Africa and elsewhere. And that is what is driving the stealing and the slaughter of the donkeys in the bushes. That is where the biggest challenge is. And it's a big, big crisis. I wish the government never opened for this, because then countries in Africa where this trade has never been opened are doing a little bit more better than for us who opened it. Much as we've closed it, still money changes hands and we find skins getting smuggled and going out of the country. But the biggest problem is this: we don't have the numbers. We don't have the numbers. 2009, the census put the numbers of donkeys in Kenya at 1.8 million. In 2019, it put the numbers as at 1.1 million. What has happened? We've lost in 10 years 44% of our species population. So then Calro produced a report in 2019 and told us, if you continue slaughtering these donkeys, by between 2024 and 2025, you'll be slaughtering your last donkey. That's when the government really needed a knee-jerk reaction and closed the slaughterhouses. But the problem we have as of now is the illegal smuggling of this. And what we are saying is that actually the port of Mombasa, we really have to be very, very careful. We are exporting donkey skins, probably declaring them as goat skins or cattle skins, but then we are losing donkeys, we are losing livelihoods for our people. Is a huge loss for the country, is a zero-sum game for the country in terms of actually our animals going out there and the country getting almost nothing.
So in order for something to leave the country, somebody's got to oversee that process. If they're leaving, because I think what we've established here is that what you said, Florence, is that people are not slaughtering donkeys necessarily for the meat. There's no ban on ingesting donkey meat in the country. I mean, but just not for trade, is what we are saying. But we don't find that people's appetite really is for this meat, right? So the interest here is in the skins and hides that Dr. Kinoti talks about that leave the country. But somebody is overseeing that process. Somebody is allowing them to leave. And one would imagine that the folks who keep up the standards know very well if this is a goat hide or if it's a donkey hide. But somebody is allowing that to happen. Where is the relationship between this regulation and government operations such as trade and immigration that allows things to move? Is there an understanding between, okay, so we're the last port of call literally for things to leave the country, and the understanding that this animal, which is a direct source of income, its economic driver, could actually be leaving the country? You see what I'm saying? Is there an agreement even at these ports to say, okay guys, we need to be on the alert because we know that these hides and skins are leaving the country? Or is it just, okay, any other day, whatever is passing, let it pass?
I want to maybe contribute to that, referencing a case we had last month in Kitui. we had the Mount Agency arrested a container ferrying donkey skin at Kanyonyo. 3721 pieces.
3,721 pieces.
Yes,
so
month.
are we essentially saying that is 3,721 donkeys?
Yes.
Dead.
Last month?
Dead.
Okay.
And when the Mount Agency, they hand over to the nearest police station. And the case went to court. And the way things went, we even understand the procedure up to now, because we were given a hearing in the following week, but on a Friday, this guy went to court. They were told the two issues which were raised, movement without, the guys didn't have a single document. Actually, they produced documents from Uganda, Mogotio and other places. And the others were on loading of skins dated 2025. But on a Friday, they were declared that they can move with their goods.
They left with the same skins?
The container left. And then there was a second arrest at Kidimani. The container went in there. We demanded that, because at Kanyonyo, at Kanyonyo we had verified the donkey skin. At Kidimani, the guys noted they were carrying goat skins. So through the court process, we were given an order through the OCS to confirm what is in the container. They were shown to all of us on a day, broad light, on a Monday, with communities, that these are donkey skin, with everything including the tail. And it was confirmed by the veterinary, sub-county veterinary officer that was donkey skin.
Okay.
Then the report was written and then handed over to the OCS to take the case to the court. The following Friday, we were given a notice that there's another process in the court, that this skin, there's another process in the court, the people who are transporting want to plea. From the plea, the container was given cleared to continue going with the whatever is inside. The second attempt at Ngoliba didn't work. So yes, the skins are going. The laws exist, but there's no enforcement.
How much is a skin fetching nowadays? If we're looking at one donkey skin, how much? Because for people to go through that, and I mean, for all you're talking, there's complacency in the system. Because if one person says it's a goat, if one person says it's a donkey, there's a significant difference between the size of these two animals. Apart from that, you can tell. I mean, Florence has talked about the fact that you could see the skin plus the tail, so you know that this is not a goat. So what does this hide fetch? Because that could be a determining factor into why people would take the risk.
And that is where the biggest problem is. African governments, including Kenya, do not know how much this traditional Chinese medicine fetches out there. You get one donkey skin, get it to China, they boil it into a gelatin. That's the raw material, the very basic raw material, because then they will process it further into candies, into lotions, into lots of other things. But then this gelatin, one skin will produce 1.5 kilos of this gelatin. A kilo of this gelatin is 150,000 Kenya shillings. So then you can imagine one skin, which is 1.5 kilos, will fetch to the upwards of 200,000 Kenya shillings.
Yes.
But look, a young man who goes to steal a donkey and slaughter it in the bush, that illegal trader is buying that skin at 5,000 shillings. Even when we used to export them, actually, do you know how much they were declaring to the government as revenue? At the county, they would declare 100 shillings, 100 shillings.
For the skin?
At the KRA, they would declare 200 shillings. So government gets 300 shillings. Because we don't understand the trade. We don't understand the value chain. You see? And that's why the trader who actually have more than enough money to actually oil the whole process, to smuggle the whole thing, because then count everything from the boy who slaughtered the donkey in the bush to everything else. you're using probably 10,000 shillings in one skin. But then you get it to China, it produces for you 1.5 kilos of gelatin, which actually gives you 200,000 Kenya shillings. So then you can see you're swimming in money. And that is where the biggest problem is.
Doc would ask the question, where are these cases of slaughtering happening, and how is this affecting the communities?
These cases are actually in specific places. Turkana is one of the top places where this is happening.
Is it because they consume it, or is it because
not quite?
Of this?
Turkana has actually consumed very, very little donkey meat, extremely little donkey meat, and they have consumed this forever. But then, Turkana is arid, is hidden. So the illegal trade goes in there, slaughters donkeys in the bushes, and gets them in that way. The other place actually that is going on is in Kajiado. Kajiado is because of the proximity to Nairobi. Two things are happening. Skins come, they are smuggled out, but then on top of that, meat comes in. And you can imagine this is meat that has been slaughtered in bushes in very unsanitary processes. And you can imagine what Nairobians are being fed with. The number of proboxes that have actually been arrested carrying meat to Nairobians.
Yeah,
okay, you just scared us.
We might have just consumed donkey meat.
Proper.
Yeah.
Because if we're talking about last month, 3,721 hides, that means there's a lot of meat that just didn't sit in the bush and allow parasites to consume it over time in the decaying process. So are we saying, Florence, that there's a likelihood, from what Dr. Kinoti is saying, that butchers and butcheries then probably served up this meat?
Yes.
Because what does it look like beef?
Yeah, it looks
You
like
wouldn't
beef.
So if
yeah,
it was on a plate now, a kilo of donkey meat and a kilo of beef, you wouldn't be able to tell don't look at me like that, Dennis. You wouldn't be able to tell the difference. Hey God. You wouldn't be able to tell the difference.
Sure,
between the two.
You can't tell the difference. And one of the worries that we have, like us in Kitui, we are in entry to Nairobi.
Yes.
So we have, last year alone, we had arrest of 4 vehicles. Nissan with the only driver seat packed with meat and skin heading to Nairobi. Prado, pickups, Probox on their way to Nairobi with skin aside, meat aside, and matumbo.
I beg your pardon.
Yes.
Okay.
The Kali tribe.
I got you. All right.
So meat gets to the butcheries, either the normal ones we know, or there's somebody who was explaining and telling me around Bama that there's a guy who walks around with a bucket of liver. So could this be donkey liver? Then I was like, I can't tell because it has to be tested. Or the veterinary doctors must verify it is meat from donkey. But the meat is getting access to our people.
This fellow with his bucket is hawking liver to the different whom now. People who are selling
people at the streets who are
at the streets. If you have your 100, you have 50 bob, you get your piece. So he was concerned, could this be donkey liver or something? Then I said, I cannot confirm because this has to be confirmed by the professionals, not a lay person like me. So yes, we've taken donkey meat, unaware. The skin is getting to China, and sometimes they also leave everything to the slaughter site. They do just shallow burial sites, but then you find dogs, birds, and every other wild animal coming to feed in there. We had 2 sites in Kitui of illegal slaughter, and there was a lot of bones all over, birds, dogs feeding into that. But yes, the problem is here with us.
Doc.
sorry.
You see, all right. It's because once or twice I've bought meat at Bama, so
the truth comes out.
Anyway, so we find ourselves in this. I want to look at communities because where this is happening, we've just established, is not in towns, because in towns we do not have many donkeys. We have these in rural areas. And we talk about the Turkanas, Kitui and Kajiado, where they depend on donkeys. And this is where we also find a lot of slaughtering is happening. In these communities who do not have these roads that depend on these donkeys to go about their businesses, how does it look like for them after the source of their livelihood, that which they depend on to get goods from one point to the other for construction in these spaces? If we're seeing the numbers of donkeys and the numbers we're seeing being taken out, what does it mean to the locals in terms of continuance of their lives in normalcy?
I want to give one example, and it's something that is an area in Kenya we never thought actually the donkey slaughter will get to, northeastern Kenya. Because then they are very, very strict on slaughter of animals and halal meat and halal food and things. But look, what is happening actually in Mandera, in Wajir, in Garissa, donkeys are being smuggled from those counties. And they are moving through, and I would want the people from that area actually to check on their roads. They'll get a lorry, a pickup of donkeys being ferried, stolen from those places and ferried along that road. And these are the donkeys that come and they are slaughtered in Kitui, in Machakos. And the meat come and find people from Garissa in Nairobi. And they're the ones who are sold that meat as halal meat. Can you imagine? So communities back in those places actually need to rise up and say no to the trade. If anybody is carrying 10 donkeys in a pickup, where are they taking them? Where are they taking them? But then as you've asked a very critical question. In Garissa, for example, the donkey is an animal for the woman. Why? Water is scarce. You find one woman actually driving 10 donkeys, each of them with 4 jerrycans of water, 20-liter jerrycans of water, and she tells you that actually I woke up at 3 a.m. with these 10 donkeys to go look for water, and now I'm coming back. Imagine that woman not having those donkeys. A woman will carry 1 20-liter jerrycan of water, for hours on her back. A donkey will carry 4 and the woman will walk free. So then you can imagine the loss here. Nairobians being fed with very bad meat. Donkey meat has a potential of carrying 16 diseases. This is what we're talking about. So actually, we're talking of a time bomb in Nairobi, where a donkey that is down with anthrax or a donkey that is down with equine flu comes over, and we all have this disease that looks like coronavirus.
So because of the fact that this animal is not a food animal, primarily, that the care that would be, obviously, the care that would be given to a food animal like cow, sheep, goat, chicken, pig is not done to the donkey.
It's not.
So the possibility of infection, or rather, it's prone to some of these diseases. They can live with them.
They can live
with them, but then they are not for human consumption.
No, that's true.
Okay.
That's true.
So that's a danger that we don't take into consideration.
Exactly.
Okay.
You're very spot on. Look at a disease like brucellosis. Brucellosis can be very chronic. Looks like malaria when it infects someone, but then can be very, very chronic. You'll be treated to places and places, and people won't know actually what is ailing you, because then doctors here are not very private to a disease. It's an animal disease. Nairobians come consume that meat, and they come down with these diseases, and then it's a big problem. And because then donkeys, as you said, they are never vaccinated. They are never actually in the policies of even county governments. When we have these massive sheep and goats vaccinations, cattle vaccinations, donkeys are always left out. So that's why actually they will harbor these diseases. And as I said, donkeys are very resilient. They just keep these diseases with themselves, up until when you're handling their meat. Then that's when now those diseases actually will be released to people. So it's a big challenge. I'm not sure that actually the law enforcers, I'm not sure that all these regulators really understand the challenge that this is actually posing to Kenyans, but it's a big, big, big challenge.
Florence, even as looking at this conversation now, of course, there are communities that are caring for their animals because they understand, what it does for them economically. But if you look at the wider global picture here, can communities and the care that they have for their animals translate to that global where we're saying, keep them, watch over them, make sure that they're cared for, and find a way to then disallow the theft of them? Because obviously these are the practices that we are seeing, whether it's, cross-border trade, which is illegal, and or consumption of their meat, which is harmful. Are communities involved in that process, or are we saying care for your animals as communities and leave the rest to whomever?
Yes, communities have been involved, and it's at different levels because it depends on the level of awareness and the understanding. Like in a Kenyan context, our Kenyans, community donkey owners and users have really voiced their agenda on the donkey, and that is what actually informed the Gazette banning of donkey slaughterhouses in Kenya. It was a community process. But the other thing that is weak is that we have very weak laws where once you currently in Kenya, I reference Kenya, once you have an issue like movement of donkeys, the laws are very lenient. You have a fine of 2,000, 3,000, which is very affordable at our level. But based on that and the work that we've done together with Brooke and other partners, we've seen a move by the Directorate of Veterinary Services to develop stringent laws that can help us address these challenges. In Kitui, we've attempted to rescue donkeys on transit by people who don't know where. They know where they are taking them, but they have no documentation. They cannot disclose where they have taken them from. Like now we have 64 that are being held by communities. We distributed them to communities as the court case goes on through the court process. And we also have others, about 40, that we've been given in custody to take care of them again as rescued donkeys. And communities are also coming to request, can we have donkeys from you people? Because we lost our donkeys and we cannot afford to buy them. So this has given us a momentum on how the communities are organizing and demanding that this process of donkey care and protection, it's a community process, but it must be backed up by the law.
Absolutely.
So that if I'm found with a stolen donkey, the law is very stringent. I'm fined properly beyond the 200 that Kinoti has talked about, what the skin can hand from the other side, so that we control and preserve.
Of course.
But unfortunately, we have just bills. From 2025, the animal health bill is still on its
pending
formation process. The animal welfare and protection bill is also on its formation stages, and also the livestock bill. If we have these ones passed in this country, they'll give momentum to the protection and preservation of the donkey.
And for them to become country. Law, absolutely. And of course, we're seeing that people are saying, watu wa muturana, sambusa. You better be careful of what it is that you're looking into. We're talking about some serious matters here that they can actually become law. Florence Ndeti is the Director, Caritas Kitui, and Dr. Raphael Kinoti, Regional Director, Brooke East Africa. These are important issues. Thank you for being here to highlight them when we continue pushing on this agenda.
Thank you so much.
Too.
Thank you for everybody who tuned into the Situation Room this morning to discuss these issues necessary for us to do. Ndu and Dennis saying, have a wonderful day. We'll talk again tomorrow. Good morning.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.